Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me talk a little bit about Attorney Sperling and his recent stances. And I decided that a while ago, before I got really busy, that I'm going to address this publicly. I talked about this on the Jet Black Air Lounge for the paid members only, and I left this on there. And when I put it up for vote as to whether or not I would discuss this publicly here, only one subscriber voted and said, yes, you should. So now I happen to have a few minutes to talk about this. And it turns out that he's going after Neferkari T. Dessalines. And the only issue I find with that is that in his pursuit of Neferkari T. Dessalines, he's pretty much going after him, and he's saying, well, this is for defamation. And whether or not the suit can go anywhere is really going to depend on if he can show some kind of loss after what Neferkari T. Dessalines said about him being a failed attorney. Now, if Neferkari has proof that he's failed as an attorney, then he may have a leg to stand on. If he does not have proof, then Attorney Sperling can have a leg to stand on. I don't know in which jurisdiction this suit was filed, whether it was in Texas, another state, or a federal court. I do understand that, and keep this in mind, I'm one-sided about a lot of things once I know the facts and I know who's right and who's wrong. And the gender war, we didn't start that. That wasn't something we did. You can argue as to whether white men started it or white women or black women, but you can't say black men started it. So if he goes after these misandrists and sues them into silence and takes their money, great. That's fine. We don't want to be their enemies, but they're the enemy. And they've been such for decades, and we're just now finding out. So we didn't have a choice to sit up and say, well, we're not going to be their enemy. They didn't allow that. They came with that. No, we're enemies. Okay, we can't stop you. But by the same token, I want to point this out as well. And that is that when it comes down to each other, we have a choice still. We don't have to be each other's enemies. We have an option. We don't have to be each other's enemies. But it is up to us to keep it that way. And unfortunately and sadly enough, we are facing a situation in which we're becoming each other's enemies, because he's willing to go after Neferkari T. Dessalines. Okay, I don't know, although I have doubts, I don't know about the validity of that suit. The courts are going to decide that independently of me anyway. I'm not an attorney. But what I don't see is a willingness to go after the actual enemy behind the enemy at all. Now, it's one thing to simply say, well, I'm not going to engage with them. I'd rather even be undetected by them. But by the same token, Attorney Sperling is willing to go and sue African nations and Neferkari T. Dessalines. On one hand, what he's saying is, I'm not going to let any non-FBA say anything about us, and I'm going to defend us at every turn. And he should. But Neferkari T. Dessalines is not sitting up here, even if he's called him a failed attorney. He didn't do it because Dennis is FBA. That's not why he did that. Because Neferkari T. Dessalines is not against FBA. Many men on the continent aren't necessarily against us. There are some who are. And you know what? They're being picked up too, and they're being sent out of the United States no matter what stances they've taken against us, if they don't have all their paperwork in order, and sometimes even if they do have it in order. So this is a time where we don't really even have to answer them like that. All we got to do is look at the ones who we know are not against us and say, okay, well, you know what? You individually, since I can vouch for you, I'll help you. And I'll let others know that I vouch for you. You all right. That's different. But what we're facing on here right now, gentlemen, is something else. We're not facing a situation or a scenario in which we have to even respond anymore when they say anything. It doesn't take that. One of the reasons why I said that it seems like the world is upside down is because Trump is actually not even focused on us. FBA, I mean, he's not saying much about us. It's like we're just under the radar. I don't think it's going to last forever. He may not even want that day to come when the focus comes back on us, but he can't be in power forever. This is his last term for which he's eligible right now under the constitutional law. He may not want that day to come, but he can't stop it. And this is why I'm going to address what it is that Attorney Sperling and Shahid Bolsen say about black folks dealing with immigrants. I'm not with this sue in Africa because Africa paid for its sins. It did. And the colonization they paid. The Arabic-speaking nations, to a certain extent, paid, but not enough. Not enough to learn a lesson. Now, relative to the actual brutality of their bondage, I'd say they paid more. But they still haven't learned a lesson because they're stubborn. They keep comparing themselves to America's racists and saying, well, we don't kill and we're not violent, so we're not really that bad. And no, because of what they say they believe, it makes it worse. But that's another topic for another day, and I've already covered that. But what he says about us standing with immigrants at this time, I have to tell you that part is true. And Shahid Bolsen, who takes the opposite view, is also correct. See, Shahid Bolsen says, well, look, if you don't stand with him, you're next. And that's true. Yeah, you're next. But you and I were already first. It just wasn't ICE that came after us. It was someone else. And then to top that off, what makes it worse is that then Sperling's also right. If you do stand with them, they ain't going to stand with you. They'll sit back and laugh at you. They ain't going to stand with you. They will never do that. So if you stand with them today, you're next tomorrow and they ain't going to stand with you. If you don't stand with them today, you're next tomorrow and they ain't going to stand with you, whether they're there or not. So in a nutshell, it still makes sense that you prepare to be next anyway, to be next again, but you don't prepare by trying to be a good ally to them because they're not going to return the favor. Well, this is just something we're going to have to face on our own. My solution was that I saw this coming years ago. I'm a pessimist by experience, and I acted on this pessimism and I fought the guck out. That's been the way I deal with it. I've said years ago, before I had a YouTube channel, you need to repatriate. And some listened and a lot said, nope, I'm American. I'm American to the bone. And yeah, my ancestors come from Africa, but I ain't left nothing in Africa. Others, they kept talking all this stuff. And now what are they facing? So I don't see really a way out for you that involves you anchoring yourselves to the states. Again, your relationship with that whole power structure has to be one of entitlement to the benefits and immunity to the burdens, because that's actually what we have earned and deserved over the years. We built it. We didn't get to benefit from it. Now it's time that the only thing they offer us are the benefits and immunity to its burdens, because that's the opposite of what they've done before. It takes opposites to cancel each other out. Time for this good opposite for us. That's it. Many of us are still sitting up thinking we can somehow work around this if we're just good allies to these non-black folks that are never going to look at us as equals, because they can't, because they believe that the oppressor is superior to the one who gets oppressed. They don't like it when that's applied to them, but they'll turn around and apply that to everybody else. So the Latino does not really sympathize with the Indian from India because the Brits colonized them and left them in a bad situation. And the Indian does not sympathize with the Latino because the Spaniards colonized them and ruined Latin America, and then the U.S. kicked in and kept the same thing going on after Spain was out. So they don't sympathize with each other that much. Where they agree is that they both want, and they're both willing to cooperate to keep each of them on top of you and me. That's what they've agreed. And right now, ICE does not have jurisdiction over us, but does have jurisdiction over them in certain cases, and is simply saying, you know what? No, this is what we're not going to do. We're not going to focus on them right now because they're already meaning us. We're already in a bad enough situation. We're already crippled enough, and we've already shown it doesn't work anyway, not permanently. So they pretty much decided, the powers that be have made a decision. We'll relax on these guys over here, meaning us. We will relax on them because they're just going to adapt anyway. Maybe what we'll do is give them a false security for a while, let them drop their guard. But we're going to move in on these other groups right here because we don't need them anymore. Remember, white supremacy breaks its tools when it's done. Nearly Fuller said it. Even Attorney Sperling repeated this one. And I think maybe Shahid Bolsen may have said the same thing. So they agree on this. Well, that particular tool has been used up. The immigrant, so to speak. America has made its use of them in terms of forming a buffer class between them and us. And either they found it didn't work well enough, or it has worked so well they don't need to continue doing this. So they're going to turn around and get rid of them. They don't want them anymore. I don't agree with that. I just know that's what they're doing. I'm not promoting that. I'm just telling you as an explanation that that's what they're doing. I don't like that. I'm just telling you that that's how they operate. I hate that, but it's beyond our jurisdiction. We can't do anything anyway to change how they're going to react to us all of the time, every time, without fail, without exception, because that's who the huck they are. Their mindset, as we have stated, is white is on top, blacks on the bottom. And this is something that the rest of the world has agreed on. So it makes no sense for us to help ICE against them. It makes no sense for us to help them against ICE. If neither one makes any sense, then Sperling is right about us sitting back and saying, no, you got this on your own. Shahid Bolsen is right that we're next. And when he said we're next, he didn't just mean Black Americans. He meant people that have a legal right to be in the United States are next. Well, that part is very true. It just doesn't behoove us to actually sit up here and try to support them, because then they're not learning the importance of being good allies until we've turned around and stopped being allies. That's what it's taken. You got the Latin Americans who have actually promoted alliances between us, reciprocity, coming out and calling out the rest of their Latin American communities for not doing the same thing. They're coming out and Sperling played the videos. They come out and they said, well, we were making the phone calls, but we couldn't get y'all anywhere. Now you want to ask where they are. Why? They don't have a reason to come out and be in support. You abandoned them. They didn't abandon you. This is your fault, not theirs. Congratulations. You ucked up. You cost this alliance. They didn't do anything wrong. You just weren't there for them. And now you're mad because they're returning the favor and they ain't there for you. Well, why should they be? And that's a legitimate question to ask. Why should they be? Meaning us. Why should we be there for them? But sometimes you have to understand that there isn't really a right way to go. But there's still some wrong things to avoid. One of them is antagonizing African nations at a time when they're coming up, and antagonizing them by suing them for something that today's living population also is suffering for to this day, despite the fact that they didn't have anything to do with that, just like we didn't have anything to do with it. We were both betrayed by the same treacherous ancestors. You're not suing your great. You're not suing your great uncle that sold you away from them. You were suing the fifth cousin removed from whom you were sold by this great uncle that's now dead and gone. You have paid for that great uncle's sin, and that cousin over there has paid for this great uncle's sin. That's how you have to understand it. Normally, yes, you acquire an entity, you acquire its debts. Normally, I get that because you acquired its assets. I understand that normally. But in this case, in a moral capacity, that debt has been paid. The money that they will never have to be able to pay such reparations is because they have paid for the sins that they today did not even commit that were done generations ago. And I do think that it is this is something for which we do have to correct Mr. Sperling. If we're going to sit up here and look at these white folk today, like he's saying to do, and say, well, we are American, we have these understandings with each other, even though we're not the best of friends, but you didn't do this, it was your grandparents, then we have to look, then how much more so do we have to look at our own cousins and say, well, you didn't do this, but this was some treacherous grandparents in common that sold away the other grandparents that weren't treacherous and kept us apart from each other. They started the process, and even they did it at gunpoint by the Europeans. Because understand this, and this is one thing that is known. We tend to look at Africa and say, well, it's divided. Okay, if it's divided, that means it's diverse. Even though it's more diverse than divided and always has been, we tend to look at it and say, well, it's divided, so it's not unified. Okay, fine. So that means there's a diversity. Well, if there's a diversity, then this means that there were powers that fought against the trade and powers that capitulated and participated. But one of the reasons why it was that the trade won out was because if you fought against it, you got traded because you got captured, because your enemies were armed. It's just like when FBI and ATF swoop in right now and they grab up a bunch of y'all and then they say, now the first one to talk walks. First to talk is the first to walk. Now they've not only incentivized you all to snitch on each other, but to even lie on each other. And somebody folds. And if nobody's guilty of anything, someone says, I'm not going to fight this thing, so let me go ahead and lie and say everybody else is guilty. And then they walk out. And now all of you are in a race to give up some kind of valuable information, whether it's true or not, so that you can get your butt out and try to gather the evidence that you had nothing to do with it in the first place. Try to secure a release for yourself. And so you're sitting up here scrambling to try to get yourself free because you don't have any more solidarity and unity with each other in the face of unending captivity. Well, the difference is that before the FBI and ATF swooped down on black folks, guilty and innocent alike, what you had is Europe swooping in, certain European powers swooping in on coastal Africa and saying to them, the first one to go into the interior and bring us people will get these guns so they can get more. The ones who fight against us are going to be on the business ends of these guns and these new modern rifles. And if they survive those wounds, and they recover well enough, they will be valuable on the markets we are trying to supply across the Atlantic. So even the ones that committed the acts of treachery didn't just do it out the blue. They had guns pointed at their heads. And we still don't exonerate them. But it is not okay for us to turn around and go after our cousins back on the home continent and blame them who are alive today and had nothing to do with this. And even when they say they don't like us or they just believe the negative stereotypes about us, many will say, well, what happened to them was unfortunate. This is a major issue, and this is why I keep looking at and I keep saying, okay, you don't pick a fight with your own and you overlook the enemy. We got two enemies, the Misandra Sapphire and her massa. And as a matter of fact, her massa is pretty much distracted at this point and focused on a lot of other things because her massa's passing away and his grandson are just not interested in keeping up the same grudge anymore. Now, they still want to remain on top. I'm not saying everything is over, but they're just not interested in being as oppressive anymore. They're trying to figure out a way to maintain the privilege without the oppression when that doesn't exist. But they'll find that out. How they'll act is a different story. But we got that enemy that's not even really focused on us right now. But then we have the enemy that's closer to us that is focused on us. And we're sitting up here and we're looking at this enemy and we're saying, oh, well, here's what we need to do. Let's you and I unify so that we can talk bad about these immigrants over here. And then let's you and I unify so that we can go after our cousins with other nationalities and passports for reparations. because one particular linguistic group borrowed an insult from another language to camouflage themselves and called us Akata. Really? One language group within a nationality took another language's word for wildcat, applied it to us, and now we're willing to go after the entirety of the continent, even the parts that were not involved in the trade, except that they lost people to it, no benefit at all. And go after them and let Europe and America off the, are you effing kidding me? Now, I'm not saying anything that's going to open me up to a lawsuit. I'm not doing that. That will probably be unfair anyway, because I live outside of a suable jurisdiction. So that would actually be unfair for me to do. It would be me pretty much, it would kind of be me punching down. And I'm not interested in that anyway. I'm really not interested in fighting with an attorney that I don't even hate. We don't agree on a lot of things. I don't think I should show my face and put my name on here. I got other people that can depend on me. It's not my job to sit up and jeopardize their livelihood and their living and their rights because of pride and ego. And I would think an attorney understands that. But he's like, look, you ain't coming up on my channel unless you show your face. Okay, fine. It's his channel. He can do what he wants. But I do have to disagree. Why are we going to go after these countries that paid for the sins of the generations that came before them, which they had no part in committing, just like we've had to pay for the sins of those same generations? Why are we going to go after them and then let off the hook the ones that actually caused the problem and then benefited from it and then never paid for it? They ain't paid yet. When is Western Europe and Denmark going to pay for what the hell they've done? And I mean suffer, and we benefit from that suffering. Well, it definitely ain't going to be the day that we all agree that we're going to go and sue African nations, if we can even get that answered in court, and sue them for money they don't have, for reparations they don't owe, and to which they're entitled to. And then leave alone the one. I mean, it's like somebody shows up and robs you, takes all of the meat, leaves you with the bones, and then you sue somebody else who's been robbed right along with you. And you let off and exonerate the actual robbers because now they own the court system. Okay, they own the court system. Can they be brought to court? See where I'm going with this? We don't go around making new enemies and then calling that wise and smart. It's not. If you make new enemies, it's not wise and smart. That's the end of that. If you make new enemies, then, and you already got some enemies, and you turn your allies into enemies. Look, let's say you have an enemy to fight, and that enemy is big enough, and then you go and make another enemy. Now you got to fight on two fronts. You done already outmaneuvered yourself. You've maneuvered yourself into a position that these two enemies now are going to want you in, squeezed in between the two of them. Hitler made that mistake. I'm not going to sit up here. We already got Massa, who's distracted, and then Sapphire, who's not fighting against us. I'm not going to turn around and go after Dikembe and start fighting with him when he's also a victim. And I'm telling you not to do that either. Do not get behind this effort. We can sit back, let the immigrants and ICE work their thing out, because let them both exhaust each other, because they're going to come for us next no matter what anyway, and we ain't going to have allies no matter what, so we're going to have something prepared to fight back with. That's all we need to be doing right now. I hope this helps. Thank you for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Out, Assalamu Alaikum, Black Heterosexual, Non-Select Male Power, because they don't like it. Black Patriarch until extinction of Judgment Day. Thanks for flying again with us here on Jet Black Air with a phrase. Jet Black's also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.